And welcome to the Savage Nation special edition today, just for you. Come back, California, and it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Dickens and Savage, what could be better? I'm talking about a California that I loved when I first came out here. It was literally a paradise. Yes, it was a land of the free and the home of the brave, but it wasn't a land of the degenerates and the home of the depraved. It wasn't anything goes, it was anything went that was acceptable to society. And look where we are today. Will we ever get California back? I don't know. Is it too far gone? I don't know. So let me begin with Dickens, and you'll see how universal Dickens was in his Tale of Two Cities and why it's still quoted today in places where they're not forcing garbage down the throats of our children. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. Now, why is this still acceptable or read? Why? It's the famous opening line from Charles Dickens' 1859 novel, A Tale of Two Cities, as I said earlier. It's a paradoxical phrase which presents the complex, contradictory nature of the era it describes, just like ours, the French Revolution, where prosperity and progress existed alongside immense suffering and inequality. And this quote captures the inherent duality of life, where there's good and evil, wisdom and foolishness, light and darkness occurring at the same time. It's set in London and Paris during the French Revolution. And we are on the verge of a revolution in America, which Trump has stopped. The revolutionary communist left has been stopped for now. But Trump is an older man. He's not going to be around much forever. Let's leave it at that. Let's leave it at that. And who will follow him? Who do we have who is as charismatic and as tough and as able to take on the forces of evil and of darkness? That remains to be seen. I don't even want to make this political. But I want to talk about the California that I still hold on to. When I go out and I see the birds on the bay, I'm not stuck in 2025. I see a universal California. And so last night, after cooking myself a very simple dinner, I didn't even want any protein. Why do people obsessed with protein? That's another story. I'll talk about nutrition another time. This obsession with protein, it's been tried before. It'll blow out your kidneys and kill you before you know it. So I cooked a simple dinner of spaghetti and sauce with a few vegetables on the side. I don't know why I felt so good. It could have been a half a bottle of wine. I didn't intend to write it. America, and it was very popular right here on YouTube. And last night it came back to me in another way. It was Come Back California, and I wrote this. See what you think of it. From snow mountains to salty sea, from snow mountains to the salty sea, what drugged up poles have done to thee, raped you of your renowned beauty, cloaked you in shame, revoked your great name, your once great name, revoked your once great name. Mad, stupid, or kick-ups from the crime lords? Surely receiving some of the billions from the homeless and immigration rackets. Come back, my golden state, before it's too late. The false hate, driven by true greed. Yeah. From Santa Cruz to SFO on a Bobcats holiday. From LA to the North Bay on a magic sleigh. Tahoe to Tiburon. Mill Valley to Silicon Valley. Mount Tam to the Desert Rams. Palm Springs to calm things. Come back, California, before it's too late. Surfers and skiers. Racers and pacers. Hustlers and harlots posing as starlets. From Hollywood's movies to the government's floozies. From the real McCoy to the false small boy. Drag racing and the Beach Boys, now drag shows and the Screech Toys. North Beach to Monterey. Cannery Road to the streets of Blow. Itals and Irish who built the streets. To hundos and hoodies destroying the fleets. Come back, California. I want to go home. That's it for now. There are other stanzas that are rattling around, demanding to be heard. And I'm sure you'll be writing your own. Maybe it's your state you write about. Go ahead. But I did not come here for the sheer of San Francisco. And I was geography here that God had created such a where you could drive from an Arctic environment down to a desert environment from zones 1 to 10 in the world of plants. And of course, I love the freedom and the openness and the idea whatever you wanted to be. But then I saw it getting out of control, and I was already concerned about where this was going. Remember, I didn't come here for fun. I came here to earn my PhD at the University of California at Berkeley, which was, at the time, the #1 school in the sciences. It still is pretty damn good. Don't confuse yourself. And I earned my PhD in less than 3 years, which is pretty remarkable considering the stresses that were upon me at the time. I was working, I had children. Luckily, my wife worked very hard. And then things happened. Things started to go the wrong way out here. And I remember saying, when anything goes, everything goes. And I also said that ultra tolerance is killing us. I had other such phrases on the radio. I remember I coined them as I went along, such as the barbs on the berries. And I talked about strawberries. That if you put a magnifying glass on a strawberry, you'll see that even a strawberry has small barbs on it to prevent or slow the eating away of its soft flesh by the insects. Well, we also had barbs on our berries. They were called police. There were stops everywhere. And then the vermin came out here. The vermin came out here, and from within, the vermin destroyed the state, like the insects that they are. And they started to attack the police. Then they attacked the social order. Then they attacked the teachers. Then they attacked religion. Then they attacked God himself. That wasn't enough for them. When the bums started shitting in the streets, it didn't matter to them because they lived in that world of fecal matter. They were rolling in fecal matter, these people. And they're still here. They're running the state from the very top to the very bottom, from the local school board all the way up to the top. Those who wallow in the feces of their beings are smearing the state with their garbage. I don't know that this can be turned around because I don't know where the will is. Years ago, I maybe not so cleverly said there is a distinction in America between the porn belt and the corn belt. Well, here in California, we have a really strong porn belt. It runs from Seattle down through Los Angeles. That's the porn belt, so to speak. And then there's the corn belt, the interior of these states. Washington state is fundamentally a conservative state away from the vermin in the cities. Oregon, one of the most beautiful geographical places on earth, still a conservative state, except in the vermin-filled areas like Portland. California, still a conservative state, and yet the governor wants to take away the few representatives that we have. Can you, in the name of democracy, of course? He wants to redistrict it so that there's no representation for the conservative Republican in the state of California. But that's democracy, according to the Democrat criminals who have ruined this state. Let me be very clear. Unless the people rise up at the ballot box and throw the bums out, this will get worse. It will not get better. That's the only way to do it. There's no other way to do this. In San Francisco, we thought things were turning around. They elected a mayor who was the descendant of the Levi Strauss fortune, rich boy, and we thought that he represented the money class that had, well, it still owned the city by and large, and that they had decided to kick out the left-wing gangsters, homeless coalition for the homeless. Yeah, right. It's all about money, Johnny. You know how many billions of dollars go into the pockets and up the noses of those in the homeless business? They're not helping the poor people in the streets. They're stealing the money. I can name one after the other of these social activist groups. Gangsters. And their fronts are the sweet girls who don't even know what the hell who they're working for. So they elected this guy, I forget his name, and I hear that things are not much better. It looked cleaner to me, but I have a friend who lives in the city, and he lives sort of in the heart down there near Lombard Street, kind of approaching Van Ness. He's lived there his whole life. He's not a newcomer. He said he walked out of his house and a bum had crapped right on his doorstep. Cop didn't break the bum's head open with a nightstick and throw him into a cell for animals. No, he said the next day they crapped in his driveway next to his garage. A cop didn't come and break the bum's head open with a nightstick and drag him away and throw him into a no. They put them on a pedestal, but the tax-paying citizen has to be beaten over the head by the bum. Because when the world is upside down, the world is upside down. When it's run by criminals and gangsters and the deranged whose optic chiasms are twisted, there's no fixing broken. There's no fixing mentally ill. Come back, California. And before I leave you, because this is all it is, there's not going to be any more. If I go on and on, I'm going to waste your time. Let me just see if I have something else here sitting on my fabulous creative desk before I leave you today on this beautiful day. No, I don't think so. Had great interviews this week. Tonight is my TV show. It's going to be a great TV show on Newsmax TV. People have to subscribe, so they don't. Some do, some don't. A lot of people stop me in the street and they say, we love your show. So there are people who watch it, a couple 100,000 people every Sunday night, which is nice. And tonight I talk about stream of consciousness, a style I didn't invent, certainly. It was invented in the Bible. I talk about how stream of consciousness as a method of communicating has been used since early times. And some of the great authors who used stream of consciousness, that's tonight's show, along with a great interview from the editor-in-chief of Breitbart.com on the billionaires behind the meltdown of America. We know of George Soros, who should have been in prison a long time ago, or deported, his assets seized, in my estimation, for what he's done to the country. One man has done more damage to this country than all the invading armies, because there have been no invading armies, except the armies of the blight. He put in place district attorneys like Alvin Bragg and others who released the vermin on the taxpayer. And now he has a sick, demented little weakling son with the billions of dollars that the father ripped off through his currency manipulations and his hedge funds. What it's going to take to save this country and save this state, I don't know. So I focus on the birds. I focus on the fog. I focus on the feel of the air in my face. I focus on the flowers. I focus on the dawns and the dusks. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there who have turned away from politics and from people. They play with their pets. They look at their dogs. The saddest sight in America today are girls pushing carriages, and I look and there's a dog or a cat. I couldn't believe it. I saw a young lady pushing a carriage, so I got out of her way to let her go by. I looked and there was a cat in the carriage. It was perhaps the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. And another time it would have been considered a mental illness. A young girl of reproductive age pushing a cat in a carriage because the men are not willing to have a family anymore. They've lost their balls. They can't even commit themselves to a family, to a child. Yeah, it's not just them. There's no social pressure on them. There's no social pressure on the men to get married and have children. And who can blame them? The next thing you know, they're in court and everything that they ever worked for will be taken away from them by the scumbags with the law degrees. They think they don't know it. Come back, California. From snowy mountains to the salty sea. What drugged up poles have done to thee. Raped you of your renowned beauty. Cloaked you in shame. Revoked your once great name. Mad, stupid, or kick-ups from the crime lords? Surely getting some of the billions from the homeless and immigration rackets. Come back, my golden state, before it's too late. The false hate driven by real greed. From Santa Cruz to SFO on a Bobcats holiday. From LA to the North Bay on a magic sleigh. Tahoe to Tiburon, Mill Valley to Silicon Valley. Mount Tam to the Desert Rams. Palm Springs to calm things. Come back, California, before it's too late. Surfers and skiers, racers and pacers, hustlers and harlots posing as starlets. From Hollywood's movies to the government's floozies. From the real McCoy to the false small boy. Drag racing and the Beach Boys. Now drag shows and the Screech Toys. North Beach to Monterey. Cannery Row to Streets of Blow. Itals and Irish who built the streets. To Hondos and hoodies destroying the fleets. Come back, California. I want to go home. Now, you can fill in the rest on your own. You can write about your reminiscences. Some people have done so on my YouTube channel. I read the comments, by the way. Some of them are very good. Some people have poetry in them and they have nowhere to express it, so they express it in comments on YouTube, believe it or not. They write these long things that are so good. They have memories of this state or of America that they grew up. They remember their mothers, their mothers and fathers, perhaps, or their grandmothers and grandfathers. They remember when women walked around with white gloves on in the streets of San Francisco. That wasn't so long ago. They remember when every man on Market Street had a hat and a coat and a tie, and now they have bums defecating on their shoes. Right. And the bums defecating on your shoes are put up on a pedestal as though they're some sacred being. A world that is upside down. The third world wouldn't even tolerate what they tolerate in this city. The men would go out and take the people doing that in front of their children. And let me tell you something, they wouldn't be doing it the next day. They wouldn't be doing it the next day. They wouldn't do it in Mexico. You wouldn't see this in Mexico. The Mexican men would, well, I'll stop right there. You know what the Mexican men would do to them? Any man would pull his pants down and defecate it outside a restaurant window. That deranged fool wouldn't be around the next day. Do I have to spell out for you what would happen? But here, no. We're told we did it to them, that they slipped through the cracks, that we didn't give enough money to the gangsters in the political world with their perfect ties and their smooth jackets and their lobbyists and their ownership of the mouthpieces in the media who continue to put out the false narrative of the oppressed minority and the downtrodden homeless. Yeah. And we, the taxpayer, keep taking it. And now the few representatives that we have left, they want to take them away from us in the name of democracy, don't you know? Well, that's it for today. More to come perhaps later. You can catch me on my website, which kind of leads to everything, michaelsavage.com, Twitter, @ASavageNation. People say, "What are you doing now, Mike? I haven't seen you or heard you in years." I hate when people do that. I said, "Well, I have my own YouTube channel. It's called Michael Savage on YouTube. There's hundreds of videos, cooking, talking. Really? I'll look at it. Okay, go look at it." I have a new thing in my life. I'll tell you what my new thing in life is. My new thing in life is anyone I've known who has been in my life who doesn't subscribe or watch any of my videos, watch me on TV, I don't talk to them anymore. And I'll tell you why. If they don't respect my performance enough to pay any attention to what I do and just want to rap with me, I don't want to know them. It's not that they're bad people. It's that I have nothing to say to them. I live through my performances largely. I live through my creativity largely. If I write this 10 o'clock at night and read it to you the next day, and my so-called friends don't want to hear it, they're not my friends, so-called. They're just people who want to know me for their own personal reasons. Maybe that's a statement to the people who know me, who consider themselves my friends. You know who has friends? Children have friends. Adults have no friends. We may think we have friends. We have maybe one person we can talk to, maybe one. I remember a story when I was young, and I think I've told it before, but it's worth telling at this time again. I grew up in a tenement in the Bronx. It was clean, though, not a degenerate tenement. I mean, everybody was immaculate. It was largely Jewish people, but there were Christians and Jews in that tenement building, 829 Longfellow Avenue. And every apartment was clean. Every apartment was immaculate. The streets were immaculate. There was no garbage. Not a paper would be dropped in the street. You could leave your kid outside in a stroller in front of the building, and the other women would watch the baby. There was no stranger running around looking to hurt children because the men would have seen them and thrown them down in the coal cellar. That's what would have happened. So in that neighborhood, most of the people in the circle that my parents were in were poor immigrants in one way or the other, and they all worked. Uh, some in the garment center, some had little stores. In the trades, there was a professional, so-called. There were no doctors or lawyers in that tenement. And amongst them was a man of no name who was, eventually he was a bar owner. He owned a bar on the Upper West Side. A fancy little bar, like out of The Godfather. Like, you went in and it was like a mahogany bar, and it was good food and white tablecloths. I don't really know. I know he was a professional gambler for a living. That I knew. And he was the tough guy in the neighborhood, and quiet, dignified. Everyone looked up to him. He never opened his mouth. He didn't push anybody around. He knew he was stronger than all the other guys, and they all know he was the alpha male in that crowd. And so he didn't have to prove it to them by being an asshole. Quiet man. And tough as nails. And I've told you the story, what he told us as kids, so many stories. He would gather the boys around as we got older, and he would tell us how to be men. He would tell us how not to be crybabies, how not to be sissies. And he said, the worst that could happen to you in a fight is you'll get a broken nose. I mean, stuff like that. I mean, who talks to kids like that? He talked that way to us. And then one day he told us another story. And it was about a guy who beat him badly. He wound up in a hospital for 3 weeks. This guy was tough. Bar owner, as I said, professional gambler, and tough. Inherently tough. There are people who are inherently strong and inherently tough. And then there are people who make themselves look strong and tough, but they're not. Weightlifting and all of that. They have big muscles, but they're not that strong. The wiry guy can beat the out of the guy with the steroid muscles. So apparently he told us a story. And I met this guy years later. This guy never said a word, the toughest of the tough. I don't even remember his name. And he was married to one of the homeliest women I've ever seen in my life, but no one ever would say a word. He would have killed him. So they were kids, who knows, in New York, whatever it was. And they got into a fight. And this guy was beating him, pounding him on the pavement with his fist, telling him to give up. Because all he wanted him to do was say, I give up. He wouldn't. The guy I'm talking about would not give up. He pounded him and pounded him and pounded him until he couldn't even talk. And then they took him to the hospital. The guy who beat him up sat by his bed for 2 weeks till he recovered. And then, of course, they were lifetime friends. This is something you're not going to read about. Well, I remember when I was becoming a teenager and this really tough guy came around, and he wasn't ordinary looking, was an ordinary looking guy. How do you describe a guy like this with inherent strength? I don't know how it is, but I knew I shook his hand. It was like shaking a baseball mitt. He never closed his hand on anyone's hand because he would have broken the hand. In other words, he was afraid of his own strength. He was one of those people. Those were the days, my friend, I thought they'd never end. Well, there were other stories that this bar owner told me that I don't recall right now, to be continued at another time, about growing up in an America that is no longer, an America that no longer exists. Perhaps it exists in our minds. Perhaps it exists somewhere in Wyoming or in portions of Utah, Colorado, away from Denver and Aspen. I don't know where it exists. Upstate New York, downstate Illinois, the farmlands of Indiana. I don't know where it exists. All I can say is, unless we bring it back, the values of those times, all is lost, my dear friends. And so that's it again, my second close of the day. I have trouble closing my acts, as I come back for another encore, even though the lights, we didn't dim the lights and drop the curtain. But I'm not ready to leave you yet. How do you like that? I am not ready to leave you now. I'm going to give you maybe a third act today. I don't know, 27 minutes is quite enough. What are your memories of America that you'd like to see come back? You can comment on YouTube when I hang up. I have the greatest comments on YouTube. I feel like turning a computer. I have 2 computers running at the same time and 2 monitors. The upper monitor is my performance monitor. My lower monitor, which is off, are all of the things that I work on. And I love to read the people who get moved by my soliloquies and then give me their soliloquies in writing that are not long. They keep them brief because I can't read 20,000 word soliloquy. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. So let me put my screen down. I put this in front of me for my notes. Let me put this here. And maybe I will get out something else to regale you with a little more storytelling, because it's still early in the morning on the West Coast. It's cold and foggy out there. I know you can't believe it, but that's one of the reasons that drew me to San Francisco. It's freezing out again. The sun hasn't come out. The fog, the marine layer, is sitting on the San Francisco area all the way out into the burbs. It's heavy. It's the coldest spring and summer we've had in 40 years, since the 80s. It's got nothing to do with climate change. It's just the cycle of the climate, by the way. And I'm against pollution. I have been my whole life. But let's stop with the hysteria, So years ago, I wrote a book called Train Tracks, which then became A Savage Life with new stories. I don't know if I want to read you this stuff. You've heard it before. An American Gangster in Spain maybe would fit. I don't know why that jumped out at me. Maybe An American Gangster in Spain would be worth reading to you right now. It's a great little book. 89, page 89, An American Gangster in Spain. Hegira from New York is nice. That's a shorty. Oh, no, it's too long. Okay, maybe Higuera from New York is better. Three, two, one, two, three, four. My first Higuera from New York was a bus ride to Miami. The dining highlights I recall were the chicken bones in a greasy bag thrown under the seat by an old lady going to her retirement, and chicken again, this time the southern fried variety, at a bus stop, at a bus rest stop in the middle of an Atlanta winter night. I always loved fried chicken as a boy, and this was really going to be a treat. The gorge on greasy chicken thighs and breasts in the heart of Dixie, where I had heard they had first perfected the recipe. The only factor limiting my enthusiasm was the time. I was asleep in the middle of the night like Ratso Rizzo. That was Dustin Hoffman's grizzled drifter in Midnight Cowboy on his death ride, sweaty and in a fit of sorts, when the jouncing greyhound abruptly stopped. The lights were flashed on. Rest stop, everybody, out, shouted the bus driver. And he came down the aisle, prodding each and every one of us, even the old chicken bone lady, reminding me of the cartoon cop of the past who cracks his billy across the soles of the sleeping park bum. Maybe he got a kickback from the rest stop owner. I really don't know. But everyone on that bus was hounded into that eatery in the middle of the night. The doors to our carriage locked. There was no escaping it. I would have southern fried chicken, even though I was slightly nauseous beneath that 3 a.m. Georgia night sky with stars as sharp as fractured mollusks in a barrel. It was okay, that's all. Too crusty, too greasy, of course. Today I know it was probably cooked in lard, and that saturated fat would account for my early death, and I kept on with my dietary ignorance. But the slight case of indigestion I nursed all the way to Jacksonville gave me that slight something to think about, which oh so softly pushed me into the arms of Morpheus. That's pretty good. I got to tell you, I hadn't read this in years. I liked it. It's good writing. Now we go to Miami. In those days, circa 1958, you could get a full breakfast for 39 cents. Two sunny side up eggs, fried in butter, one slice of grease ridden ham, two slices of white toast, suffocated in butter, coffee, juice, 39 cents. I loved every bite, but have never again eaten anything like that. Now it's one healthful and bland dirge after another. But I'm still alive, which is an achievement in this world. Balancing your wants against your needs without becoming homicidal or suicidal is success unto itself, though I will admit to approaching both states several times along the road. Kerouac's On the Road had just surfaced at Queens College. Harold, the older fat boy in the crowd, smilingly fished it from his tent-like trench coat one rainy autumn day in Flushing. He told us younger guys milling around between classes that the book portrayed a wild car ride across America, free sex, saxophones, and drugs on every page. As they say today, it was a real page turner. My first, really, unless you count that book I read when I was about 8 about some guy who flew a seaplane into Arctic lakes saving Eskimos and trappers. Kerouac's Odyssey was not about saving others. He was on his own road of salvation, seeking drama through thrills, not yet knowing that peace within came only when the trips were over and you could sit on a balmy pier watching the gulls while thinking about where you had been and what you had thought you were doing there. Now, it is true that Tolstoy died in his 80s, covered with snow, on a train station bench after setting off on one more journey, and that there is something defeatist about saying you're through traveling while still young and healthy. This attitude is true sacrilege in a nation obsessed with motion. But like Kerouac, America too will learn her limits. And I hope it's before we burn out in an old armchair in front of a television, drunk and drugged, watching another one of our endless foreign peace missions. Oof. But Harold's book was just the kick I needed to unchain myself, so I thought, from clan and caste. So during mid-semester break, it was my first bus trip to Miami, followed in later seasons by a wild nonstop car ride, 8 of us packed into a fast Hemi Dodge, and later still an Army surplus DC-3 that taxied on a tail wheel from Newark, tilted at 45 degrees. You felt like Buck Rogers about to take off on a space adventure until the stewardess, not yet a flight attendant, distributed those box lunches that smelled of cardboard. Other than being robbed in a Fleabag hotel by a midget bellhop who pulled some kind of trick on me by making my bankroll of $80 disappear from the hotel's safety box, nothing much exciting happened down there. It is true I got my money back by causing a bad scene, provoking seedy Orson Welles types to slowly close in on me in a circle, only being saved at the last minute by the Dade County Blue Boys. They came, mind you, because the midget had called them in an attempt to intimidate this Yankee into backing off on his crazy demands. But when the 6 cops arrived, as I say, I was surrounded by an assortment of perfectly fine carnival geeks, and the midget suddenly discovered that my money was somehow still in that steel box. Must have fallen down and back somewhere, that's all. Charged with pulling victory from what would have been fiscal disaster on my first solo flight from the nest, I took my friends to dinner, and I don't remember the meal, and that's all I've got to say about eating in Miami in 58. That, my friends, is it today. Good, I like the way it connected up. From Comeback America, from the best of times to the worst of times, winding up reading about Hegira from New York and ending up in Miami. That is good stuff. And I'm proud of my writing. You know, I haven't read that since I wrote it. I don't read my own books. I don't sit and look at my own paintings, so to speak. I got to tell you, it's as good as anything I've ever written, I ever read. So I guess I am, after all, what I always wanted to be. I hope you are too. Just try to be all you can be. That's all I've got to say to you. Until tonight on Newsmax TV, and tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, may God save America.